Yo, what is going on, Clutch Crew sports fans? This is Eric, your ranting co-host here. I will actually be hosting the episode this time, but we do have Zach here. We've also got Nate with us. We're excited to bring you another episode. We're going to be talking about top NFL offenses so far this season. Last week we talked about the defensive side of the ball, so this week we're going to talk offense. We'll also recap how our lockboard went. It did not go very good for most of us, but we'll cover that when we get there. And then we also have to give another update on our fantasy league that we do as a podcast together. And then finally, at the end, we're going to break down who we as Clutch Crew Sports believe are the top 10 most interesting teams in the NBA. So that being said, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's up, guys? It's Zach here. Glad to be on this episode. Wasn't sure about my status we're coming into this episode, but handing the hosting duties over to Eric for this one. I'll be participating just as a regular member on the episode, and I'm really looking forward to talk about the NBA interesting teams, and definitely excited to talk about these offenses because offense is going crazy this year in the NFL. These teams just don't seem to be playing defense much, and you see wild scores. So happy to talk about that. And let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
Hey, what's up, guys? Nate here again. I had a better week for my real football teams than with my lockboard picks, but yeah, like Zach said, I'm excited to talk about the offense here. We did defense last week, and it was kind of hard to find teams that were playing great defense, honestly, because like Zach was saying, it's been some crazy numbers this year for offense. So I'm excited to get into all that, and should be a fun time.
Yeah, so you'll notice in our intros that Zach and I didn't really say anything about the Jags. They lost again. And unfortunately, they're not going to be featured in this segment here. So,
wow, that's a shocker.
Yeah, and they shockingly enough, they weren't last week either. So maybe
no,
next year. What's that?
The only I'm thinking like maybe if we did like a special teams minus the kicking game, like the Jags would be in that because Agnew and then our punter Logan Cook. We have a good special teams. We got to fix the kicker issue, but
yeah, and also
they're good on special teams.
And also, don't even get me started on how awesome our mascot is. Like we got that locked down.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, guys, enough distraction and sidetracking there. So, Nate, Zach, and myself have all picked an offense that we feel is doing really good this year that we would like to talk about. So I will go first, and I'm going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. This one, I wouldn't necessarily call it a full surprise, but I am still somewhat surprised at how good they're doing. Offensively, last year, Kyler Murray had some great games, but it just seemed like their offense was inconsistent at times. But this year, they are really putting it together. I know this week against the 49ers, they only had 17 points. That was, pretty low by their standards. But in their first 4 games, they put up 30 plus in every game. And even in a season like this where the defenses aren't playing as well, that's still really impressive. Kyler Murray's been doing a great job spreading the ball around. He hasn't just been solely relying on DeAndre Hopkins. They've got plenty of other guys that have been getting it done. I'm just really impressed overall with this offense. And as a result of that, they're currently the only unbeaten team remaining in the league. Usually by this point in the season, there's like at least maybe 2 or 3 teams left that are still unbeaten, but they're the only one. And while their defense more so got it done today, it's definitely been the offense overall that's been carrying this team. So I am very impressed with the Cardinals. Zach or Nate, do either of you guys have any thoughts on the Cardinals?
Yeah, so I, preseason picked Kyler Murray to be the MVP. That's, looking like a smart pick so far. He's just been dynamic too with his legs. He's a real threat. The problem is you have all these deep threat receivers that you have to worry about, and it really stretches the defense on the field. And then Kyler Murray is one of the fastest, other than Lamar Jackson, he's probably the best rushing quarterback right now. So honestly, they're reminding me kind of that, Baltimore team from a couple years ago with how good their offense was. Like they kind of came out of nowhere with Lamar. That team was more ground and pound with the running backs than Arizona's running backs are, but still, they're just a surprise to me at just how good they are, and also a surprise to be the last unbeaten team. I had high expectations for the Cardinals. I I was tempted to pick them to go far in the playoffs, make the NFC Championship game. It's looking like they might be one of those teams this year. So lots of good things about the Cardinals offense. Nate, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray just like really just looked like me playing with Michael Vick in the old Madden games. This way he like not even necessarily getting rushing yards, which he does great at, but just like extending plays in the backfield and being able to launch stuff downfield on the run. And I think that's just been really impressive to me. And even Rondale Moore, I was watching some of the game earlier, and he's starting to look like another weapon there. He's starting to blossom into his own, and having him, DeAndre Hopkins, and AJ Green, who's kind of looked like his old self at times. It could be a nasty thing in Arizona that keeps getting better as the year goes on.
Yeah, for sure, man. Great points, everybody. And then, so now I will let Zach talk about his choice of offense.
Yeah, so definitely after this week 4 in the NFL, I had to go with the LA Chargers, scoring 47 points against the Browns, which on the last episode is actually the team that I talked about as having a really impressive defense. So to me, the Browns still have a really good defense, and the fact that the Chargers just put up 47 points on them, and they didn't, I mean, if they'd gotten the ball back, I guarantee you they would have scored again. That's just how they were playing in this game. It was just, especially the second half, just score, score, score. And the team has the weapons too. Like they have the QB, they have, I think, a good balance of run and pass too with the team. Like they might not have as high of a scoring total as some other teams, in other weeks and stuff, but as an offense, they can really just control the game either way. It's hard to shut down Austin Eckler, such a dynamic running back. He's a good running back and obviously receiver out of the backfield as well. You have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They're both playing phenomenal. Keenan Allen gets underrated a lot, I think, being with the Chargers his whole career, not having like playoff success. Nobody really puts him in the top wide receiver category with some other guys, but he's just Mr. Consistent with them. As long as he's there, he's going to be a consistent wide receiver one. Mike Williams has stepped up a lot. They have, they lost Hunter Henry at tight end, but Jared Cook's been pretty well for him too. So the Chargers on offense, I mean, I think too they're only going to be getting better because Herbert's young. I think he's still learning things. Like they're scary right now, but give us 10 more weeks or so, and this offense gets more and more rolling together. I think this offense can be real scary, and it's evidenced by their record as well this year. They have a great record. The Chargers, man, I definitely didn't think they would have this big of a jump from last year, but they've really surprised me. Eric, do you want to add anything of note to the Chargers offense?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers offense is obviously legit. And while I picked the Cardinals as my, team for this, like the Chargers were definitely one of the teams I was considering picking. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being the number one overall offense by the end of the season. I mean, even with as good as a lot of these teams are playing, and even as good as a lot of these teams are playing that we're not even talking about in this episode, I still think that the Chargers could be the number one overall offense. I mean, the running game is great. It's so hard to stop a running back like Eckler that can, beat you through the ground and beat you through the air at the same time. I mean, running backs like that are just so valuable. The offensive line is playing better. than they have in the past, and that's giving Herbert more time, which is just making him even more lethal. Like, yeah, the Chargers are legit, man. So I guess we will move on over to the final one, and that will be Nate's choice of offense. So Nate, take it away, man.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the New Orleans Saints here. They haven't been quite as dominant as either of the last two teams we talked about, the Cardinals or the Chargers, but I wanted to throw them in as more of like a surprising top offense, in my opinion. Obviously, they've had a lot of talent there in New Orleans for the past few years, but having Jameis Winston take over as starter from Drew Brees this season, there's a lot of question marks about, how consistent would they be. Obviously, the talent's always been there for Jameis Winston, but during his time with the Bucks, he was very up and down, and his decision making was not great at all. So there's a lot of people were unsure about how they look this year, and I think through the first 5 weeks they've impressed me. I think their lowest output has been about 20 points. I think 21 points versus the Giants last week. And today, Jameis put up 4 touchdowns. They put up 33 on Washington, which was a pretty solid defense coming into the game. And I think that they've looked better than I expected them to look. I thought we would be getting a little bit more of like trademark Jameis, where he'd, be putting up like a couple touchdowns, but also like 2 picks, maybe a pick 6, like here and there. And for the most part, he's, looked pretty controlled and helped to manage the flow of their offense. And they haven't, like I said, they haven't been as dynamic as the 2 offenses we just talked about, but they're rolling along pretty well. And they don't even have Michael Thomas back from his injury yet. So if he comes back in the next couple of weeks and fits back into his old role, it could be a pretty dangerous offense there in New Orleans. So that'll be more of an interesting one to watch. See how they can compete with the Buccaneers in the NFC South there.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, man, and mainly just because with Drew Brees leaving, I mean, obviously he wasn't the same player the last couple of years, but when he was at his peak for the Saints, I mean, they were one of the best offenses, and so I think everybody wondered, how were the Saints going to do, once Drew Brees finally retired, and while they're not as good at, say, as Drew Brees during his prime, they're still doing really well. And then, like you said, too, like Michael Thomas has been, out with injury. He hasn't even played yet this season. When they get him back, they should do really well. And Marquez Callaway is starting to play better. He kind of struggled to start the season, but he's been putting it together. Obviously, you got Alvin Kamara. I mean, duh, like
a lot of Tennessee on that offense.
Yeah. You always know Alvin Kamara is going to step up. So the Saints are definitely an intriguing team to watch going forward and seeing if their offense keeps it up. So good takes there, guys. And we're now going to move into the games that we're going to highlight for the upcoming week that we are excited to watch. And so I guess I will talk about the first game, and that's going to be the Chargers versus the Ravens. And obviously the Chargers just had a really exciting matchup with the Browns, and we covered that last week, how excited we were for that one, and that one definitely did not disappoint. I definitely think we made the right call picking that as one of our games to highlight. Chargers did get the win in that shootout, and definitely got a potential for another shootout here against the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens have, obviously, with Lamar Jackson, he's always going to be a threat, with his legs. And, when he gets the passing game going, the Ravens are very hard to stop. And obviously with what we all highlighted about the Chargers now, we know how good their offense is. So this is a game that I expect to be pretty high scoring. It might be a little more clock control than the Browns Chargers game. I don't think it'll be as high a scoring as that one, but I still think we're going to see a lot of points on the board. But for me, even though the Ravens are hosting this game, just the Chargers are just so hot right now, and the Ravens do have some injuries that they've been dealing with. So I don't think the Ravens are going to be able to keep up with them. I always like to do like a score prediction, but I'm going to say I'll say the Chargers win this game 31-20. But Zach, I'll hand it over to you. Do you agree with me that the Chargers will win, or do you think the Ravens will take it? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for all three of these matchups that we're going to talk about this week, they're all, I think, really fascinating and going to be really close games. At least they should be. I've been flip-flopping on this. I think I'm going to go with the Ravens in a narrow victory. I think, home field advantage, I think that'll play a factor, West Coast to East Coast thing. And I think the Ravens defense will be able to get to Herbert a little bit more than some teams have been recently. I think the Ravens defense is going to have, they're an opportunistic defense. They get takeaways and stuff like that. The offense, I still think the offense can be good for Baltimore. So I'm going to say, I'll do the score thing like Eric did. I'll say Ravens win 34-31. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, I think that the Ravens have, pretty solid defense and all-around good roster. We'll see how they look tonight. But I think after that showing by the Chargers, I can't, pick against them. Same thing as I picked them last week in this game today, and I for the same reason I can't go against them. I think their offense is rolling too well right now. As far as score prediction, I think the Chargers got to put up at least 30 points. I think I would go something like 31 to 24 Chargers.
All right, so we got a 2-1 vote in favor of the Chargers on that one. Zach, let us know what's going on in the next game.
Yeah, the next game, if you are a fan of the Oklahoma Sooners, you'll have a tough time deciding between which Heisman QB that went to your school you're going to be rooting for, because it's going to be Cardinals and Browns, Kyler versus Baker. I believe this matchup is because of the 18-week schedule, the 18th game or 17th game. I mean, that this was a added matchup because of that new rule. So, that this is adding another great game to the NFL schedule, and these are both teams that we've been talking a lot about. Eric just talked about how good the Cardinals offense has been. I talked last week about how good I think the Browns defense is. I've been, high on the Browns all year. They're still a good team, even though they lost to the Chargers in that shootout. The Browns are going to be at home in this game, and I'm just going to have to keep picking the Browns. I know they let me down against the Chargers, but I think the defense has a bounce back showing. San Francisco was able to do some things to Arizona to slow them down a bit. We saw, Arizona, they've been winning games, but they haven't necessarily been blowing everybody out. Like the Jaguars had a double-digit lead on them, or a 9-point lead on them. And today, a rookie QB came, within a possession of them. So the Browns are a complete team. That the Cardinals, they're undefeated, but I think that's a target on your back. If you're a team, you want to beat that undefeated team really badly. Still, I do think this will be pretty high scoring though. I'm going to say Browns win 35-27. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, out of the three games we're talking about, this is probably the hardest one for me to pick, but the Cardinals are undefeated right now, and I feel like I just can't go against them right now. While the Browns, I do think the Browns are probably a more complete team overall, but they struggled in these like shootout type of games. They struggled against the Chiefs in the beginning, and then the Chargers. They've struggled against the more like really dynamic offenses. So, but keeping with the theme of offenses, I do think this is going to be another high scoring game. But I'm gonna go Arizona 31-28 here. So we got another 1-1 vote. Nate, break the tie for us. Who do you got here?
Yeah, so I think I'm probably gonna go with the Cardinals here. Just everything we talked about earlier about Kyler Murray and that offense. I think I'm gonna give them the edge versus the Browns. The Browns had a great showing today offensively, but I think that versus the Cardinals. I don't know. It's like I just have a hard time picking against a guy like Murray who's really rolling right now. And the Browns do have a very solid defense, but I think they were exposed in a pretty big way against the Chargers. And I do think that the um, Cardinals do have the tools to attack them in a similar way. So I'm going to go with Arizona, but I do think, like you guys said, it's going to be a higher scoring game. I'm going to go Arizona um, 35 and Cleveland 28.
All right, man. So Nate agreeing with me again there. Zach, you've been outvoted so far.
Yeah, but when we get to the when we get to the lockboard, I might have some more credibility after this week.
Yeah, we're getting close to that point. We're not quite there yet. We do have one more game to talk about. It's actually going to be the Monday Night Football game. So, Nate, break this game down for us and give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I think this is a pretty interesting matchup. Bills versus Titans. The Bills are getting their first, I think, real test tonight versus the Chiefs. We'll see how that game plays out. Probably have some better insight after the game as to how this matchup is going to look. The Bills they played the Steelers week 1, but besides that, they played Dolphins, Washington, and Texans, who none of those are really adequate competition for the Bills. So it'll be interesting to see how they look tonight. But I think this is gonna be a pretty interesting matchup in that it's kind of like strength versus strength. Sorry, based on like the profiles of these two teams, they're both kind of like more defensively oriented, traditionally kind of ground and pound type teams. Obviously, the Titans have Derrick Henry, who has looked like his old self through 5 games this year. He's still rolling over defenses, and it's really hard to stop him for a full 60 minutes. So the Bills have their work cut out for him there. As far as slowing down Henry, if they keep him contained long enough for Josh Allen to put up some points, I think they could come away with the win there. But I think that's really the big key. I think anytime you play the Titans is if you can keep Henry from having a ridiculous 150-yard 2-touchdown game, you have a pretty good chance of winning. I think the Bills do have a defense. Out of any team in the league, they're probably one of the top few teams that could do that. So I think it'll be an interesting one. It's hard for me to make a great prediction here without. I really want to see how the Bills look tonight, but I think if I have to pick, I'm gonna actually go. I'm gonna go with the Bills. I just think that, like I said, their defense has the tools to slow down Henry enough to make the Titans really one-dimensional, and we saw that game versus the Jets. They didn't look at all in sync offensively, and I think if the Jets can do it, the Bills definitely should be able to. So I'm gonna go Bills. I'm gonna go Bills 20, Titans 17. Low scoring, close, kind of defensive. Running the ball downhill type of game. But I'm interested to see what you guys have here.
Yeah, this should be a fun Monday night game. Bills and Titans. I know the Titans, they won this matchup last year, but in my opinion, there's just too many injuries right now for the Titans. I mean, their injury report is like too long to type on Twitter. Like, you can't type all the injuries that they have right now. And, that's a problem. They can get away with it against a team like the Jags, but playing the Bills, we don't know how the Bills are going to fare against the Chiefs. That game's going on while we are recording, but I'm pretty confident enough to say the Bills will win this. I think it would be closer if the Titans were at full strength, but with the injuries that the Titans have, I'm going to go Bills. I'll say Bills 34, Titans 24. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with you guys pretty much 100% here. I think the Titans' injuries are just going to be too much to deal with. I mean, it was obviously evident in the game against the Jets that they lost how big of a deal all their injuries were, and they managed to, survive against the Jags today. But one thing about the Titans, though, that I think that is bad for them right now is they've already been kind of known as a bad defense in terms of the secondary, but the Jaguars offense today, while they struggled a lot in the game, their run offense did really well against them. I mean, James Robinson was carving them up. So I just think, and this Bills offense is way better than the Jags offense. I don't think the Titans are going to be able to stop them enough. And generally, the way you beat the Titans is if you can get a lead on them early and force them to abandon the run game, and then that's how you take Derrick Henry out of the picture. I think the Bills will be able to do that. I'm going to go Buffalo 31-14. So we're all unanimous on the Bills there. I have a feeling if Connor was here, he would agree with us on that one. Not sure how he would have gone on the other two games, but yeah. So those are our key games to highlight this week, and we're going to transition into the segment I'm least looking forward to talking about this time, which is going to be the lockboard. I've been having a pretty good season so far, but this was not my week. Connor, Nate, and myself actually all got zeros. All of our upset picks went south, but Zach got 2 out of his 3 games right, which we'll talk about here shortly. So Zach pulled off a 6-point week, finishing first for the week. And Zach, I know you really needed that, man, because you'd been kind of struggling up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I definitely needed that, and it helps to see you guys all stay at the same total. So it's like not only did I get points, but also, I climbed back in a major way because you guys all got 0 points this week. So, I mean, the difference now between first and last is 9 points. So that just tells you how competitive this season of the lockboard has been.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, I'm just for at least obviously for me, since I'm still in first right now, I would obviously love to like somehow run away with this, but at the same time, it's always more fun when it's more interesting. So now that Zach got those 6 points and the rest of us got 0, the overall standings are: I'm still in first with 25. Connor is still in second with 20. Nate is still in third with 18, and then Zach, while he's still in last, is now just 2 points behind Nate with 16. So, uh, pretty close standings here a few weeks into the season. So, um, I'm definitely ready for next week. The one good thing for me is at least that I will have the first pick next week. So just to recap what happened, while I will say too, like, if you're wondering, man, how did you all get zeros? Like, y'all suck at picking games or something. Like, you might be thinking that if you're listening, but a lot of our misses were extremely close games. And of course, the other factor you have to consider is if you want to get more points, you have to go with upset picks. You can't go with safe picks to get points. So we're generally picking upsets in these, which is also why the record was bad. I just want to throw that little disclaimer in there, but
Yeah, of course.
but so Connor had the first pick, and as you can see here, like I talked about with the close games, he had Arkansas over Ole Miss, and that ended up being a shootout game, and Ole Miss won by 1 point. I believe it was Arkansas tried a 2-point conversion at the end of the game to win it right, and they failed. Was that correct?
Yeah, that was correct. So I mean,
Okay,
within like the last 2 minutes, both teams scored touchdowns. Arkansas with 1 second left scored a touchdown, and then they went for 2 to go for the win. Didn't get it, but the score was in the 50s, so that just tells you about the game.
I knew the score was 52-51. I mean, just crazy. So, and then he had Virginia Tech over Notre Dame for a 2-point play, but Notre Dame ended up coming back in that game. It looked like Virginia Tech was going to win that. I didn't get to watch that one, but I was following the score. So that was another unfortunate one for him. And then finally, Syracuse over Wake Forest. I know that game went into overtime, and Wake Forest actually had to come back in that one too, I believe, so to win that. So, even though Connor pulled off a 0, he could have just as easily gotten all 8 possible points. I mean, so I will say, normally when a lot of us get zeros, Zach likes to pull up the goofy dragon meme thing like I got last year at one point. But even though Connor got a 0, definitely not deserving of the goofy dragon meme because, like I said, he could have just as easily got 8 points. So, but with that being said, we're going to move on to Zach, who was the only one to get any points. So, Zach, break down how your week went here.
Yeah, so I actually was liking a lot of the 3-point plays this week. 3 points, for those of you who've forgotten or don't know what the scoring system works, 3 points is when a spread. Let me just double check just to make sure here. When the spread of a 3.5 to 6.5 point spread. So that's the qualifier for a 3-point pick. And so that was what a lot of my early picks were. The blind picks that we do, they were a lot of 3-pointers, and I ended up getting Chicago versus the Raiders correct. That was my first round pick. The Bears won 20-9. Really good, ball control for Chicago in that game, and the Raiders really, hurt themselves with penalties and turnovers and just dumb decisions and stuff. So I thought the Bears, I was, optimistic on their chances. I feel like Justin Fields is an upgrade over Andy Dalton, and the defense I think has been playing really good for the Bears. So that's why I wanted to pick them. And then in the second round, I also got this pick right: Boise State over BYU as a 3-point game. I feel like BYU is due for a loss. Boise State was due for a win, and it was a similar type of game as the Chicago Raiders game. Like Boise State got lots of fumbles. They caused BYU to cough it up a bunch. They had a bend but don't break type of defense, and they were running the ball really efficiently in the first half. So Boise State was basically able to control the game the entirety of the game with a lead, and they ended up pulling it out. It was an upset, but in my eyes, I thought Boise State could easily have won that game, which they did. The one I got, Cincinnati over Green Bay, as a 2-point game. So I picked the Bengals to beat the Packers last week on the podcast. It was only a 2-point game, and they're two good teams. So I had this a little bit lower down on my preferred picks list because I figured it'd be close, and it's only 2 points. I ended up getting it as my round 3 pick, and if the guy had made the field goal, I would have gotten this. It was an overtime game, so similar to Connor in this one, just a bad break on it. But I can't complain with the 6 points this week compared to everybody else. Very happy with how the week turned out personally. Nate, do you want to go over your picks?
Yeah, so I'm kind of here with Eric and Connor in the no points week. And honestly, I feel pretty similar to I feel for Connor here because a lot of my games were close as well. I went with Denver over Pittsburgh as a 2-point play, which Pittsburgh did a lot better than I thought they would. Big Ben actually aired it out for the first time this season, so that one I kind of was just wrong on. They beat Denver by I think it was like 8 points, so it was at least a touchdown. So it was a pretty handy win for the Steelers. But my Detroit over Minnesota pick, that would have been a 5-pointer, and Detroit was up, I believe, by 1 or 2 points with less than a minute. I know they got a touchdown and then went for 2 to take the lead, and they gave the ball back to Minnesota, and they went down the field and scored to win the game there at the last second. So that was kind of a bummer there. Dalvin Cook didn't play, which hurt me in fantasy, but it helped make it a close game for Detroit. But they ended up blowing at the last minute, so it cost me a 5-pointer there. And then my other 2-point that I took was Texas over Oklahoma in that big rivalry game on Saturday, and that was another one that Texas was blowing out Oklahoma really in the first couple quarters. I went with Texas because I knew those games always get crazy. Oklahoma was favored, but it's really hard to pick that rivalry, and I just didn't see Spencer Rattler getting it done for Oklahoma, and I was right. He came out and he stunk first couple quarters, but I didn't expect him to pull him and put the backup in and then have the backup play as well as he did. And Oklahoma came back and won on the last play of the game, which kind of hurt. It was only a 2-point win, so it didn't hurt as much as the Detroit loss, but my toss-up bet there didn't quite pan out. So hoping for a better week next week. It's kind of been rough, really, for everybody the last couple weeks. I don't think I only got one right last week and then 0 this week. So hoping to get back on the right track next week there.
Yeah, and now it's my turn, but I don't want to talk about mine, so we'll just move on to the next segment. Yeah, so for me, I had Penn State over Iowa was my first pick. I will say going into the week, there were not very many upsets that I liked, but I also just didn't want to pick, a bunch of one pointers because even though I'm in the lead, it's not like I have a big lead where I could just afford to take safe picks. So like I wanted to pick upsets, but they didn't pan out for me. But I was pretty confident in Penn State over Iowa. I thought for sure that Penn State would beat them. And even though that was only a 2-point play, because it was like a 1.5-point spread, I still wanted to pick that one high on my list because I really thought for sure Penn State would win. And they were up 20-10 in the third quarter, but then kind of like Nate talked about with Texas and Oklahoma, they choked, and Iowa ended up getting that win, so I didn't get that. My next pick actually ended up being the Jags over the Titans. I know people would look at that and be like, why would you pick them to beat the Titans? But like Zach and I had been talking earlier in the week, and we were discussing how, with the whole Urban Meyer distraction scandal thing, they could either like come unite as a team and come together, and then, feel like the Jags are so due for a win. I really thought maybe they could get it. And I also thought maybe the Titans would overlook the Jags, even though they had lost to the Jets last week. I did think the Titans were vulnerable, and especially with all their injuries they have. So it was just a lot of different factors that led to me making that pick. But while there was some horrible officiating in the game, I don't think the Jags would have won anyway. So that was another L I took. And then finally, there was one 5-point play that I thought could happen, and that was Stanford over Arizona State. I thought with, Stanford upsetting Oregon the week before, I just thought they had all the momentum on their side. And I thought, man, if they can beat Oregon, they can beat Arizona State. But Arizona State's quarterback, I can't remember his name, but he was like a mobile quarterback. I was watching the game, and he was just carving them up, whether it was with his legs or through the air. And Stanford couldn't stop him. So I pretty much knew by halftime I wasn't getting that dub. So 0 for 3 for me. I think this is the first week I've gotten 0. So I'm at least happy I've gone this long without a 0. But looking forward to having the first pick next week. And hopefully I can, like Nate said too, hopefully, can turn this back around and we can start seeing some more green on this lockboard than red. So,
yeah.
So we will be talking about the 10 most interesting NBA teams here pretty soon. But first, Zach is going to give an update on our Clutch Crew Sports podcast league that we all run together. So, Zach, how did we do this week, man?
Yeah, so pretty good week for the Clutch Crew Sport podcast. We were facing the Oblivion Bar podcast. That was the other podcast that we were going up against this week. And, I believe, it's a confirmed dub already for us. We just had just the right players at the right time. I mean, Zeke did really well. Even though we had Saquon who got hurt, we still had Justin Herbert. Oh wait, we didn't have Saquon.
That's their team.
Oh shoot, I'm looking at the wrong.
Yeah,
my bad.
I was like, whoa, wait, what?
No, I was like looking at the right for some reason there. Okay, so they had Zeke and they had Herbert, so that doesn't look good. But we did have Kamara who got us almost 30 points. Eckler got added 30 points. Jamar Chase added 33. Basically everybody performed, and on their side, Darren Waller was their big disappointment with just 8 points. DJ Moore only had 8 points. Saquon Barkley they had who got hurt, so he only got like 1 point. So there was some lucky breaks for us, but we still have Lamar Jackson to go on Monday Night Football and Dawson Knox as well. So really, really good performance for us this week, and it moves us now to 2-3. So a 2-game win streak for the podcast, guys. So we are at 2-3 right now. I'm not sure what we will be like in the standings, but climbing our way back up. Love to see it.
Like, yeah, man. And if you're, if this is your first time tuning into this, and you say, "Oh, 2-3, that's not that good." Well, like exactly, like I said, we were 0-3 and had some close losses that really, one thing goes a different way, and that we could have easily won those games. So, I'll take the 2-3 record, given how the season started, and we're going to end the show with Around the Hoop, and as mentioned in the intro, uh, Zach, Connor, and myself have combined our rankings for the most interesting teams in the NBA. We've averaged them out. And so this will be a group consensus top 10 list. And so, just this doesn't necessarily mean this isn't who we think are going to be the 10 best teams in the NBA, just like we did with the NFL. This is who we think are the 10 most interesting teams to watch. So, with that being said, we're going to kick things off here. And so Clutch Crew Sports has determined that the number 10 most interesting team in the league this year will be the New York Knicks. And so shout out to Nick Rue if you're listening to this. I know you're a big Knicks fan. We do have them as our number 10 most interesting team. I know I put them on my list when we did the rankings. For me, with the Knicks, it's mainly, they were a surprise team last year. I think most people had very low expectations for them. Even if they were going to make the playoffs, I think most people had them, getting in as like a 8 seed, like barely getting in type of deal. But, they finished in the middle of the Eastern Conference. And I know the East isn't a great conference, but still, like, considering what people were expecting of them, that was a pretty good finish. And so for me, what makes them interesting is going to be able to see if they can keep that up. Was their performance last year, and a big reason because of that was Julius Randle. And so for me, it's, was all of that a fluke, or are they going to, have continued success and take the next step? Or could they just completely fall off the map again? The Knicks are a really unpredictable team to see like how they're going to finish up. So that's why I'm interested in them. So now we are going to transition to the number 9 most interesting team, and that will be
the Portland Trailblazers. So, I had a big reason why the Trailblazers made this list. I think there's a lot of interesting things about them. There's still the potential for Neil Olshey to make a big trade with CJ McCollum. That's, still a possibility. So that's something that could be interesting if they make a trade. But while a majority of the core of this team is being brought back from last year, so that might not make things interesting. I still think anytime, Dame is playing, he could have 60 points and shoot 3 logo threes in a game. Like, if you're going to watch an NBA game, that's something interesting to watch. So you have that impact also too with the off season, that they had, like, there was the, frustrations from Dame and stuff. Like, he's still with the team, but I think it's really important for the Blazers as a team to have a good season, make Dame feel, secure again, that he's making the right decision, staying with Portland. They have a new head coach in Chauncey Billups. So Chauncey Billups, great NBA player. It's the first time he's a new rookie head coach. So that's a big change. But there's a lot on the line here. Neil Olshey, the GM, he's definitely on the hot seat if they don't make a good run this season. And then also too, some young up and comers to watch. I've been hearing lots of good things in training camp and summer league stuff with Nasir Little and Anthony Simons. So 2 young players, first round draft picks from a couple of years ago, Nasir Little and Anthony Simons. I think both of them are going to have a bigger impact on the team this year. And from what I've been hearing with the Blazers news, that those 2 guys, potential 6th man of the year type candidates if things go right. So I'm obviously going to be rooting hard for the Blazers this year to make the playoffs and go far in it. And I do think they're going to be real interesting to watch. And now the Clutch Crew Sports number 8 most interesting team.
And that is going to be Connor's team, the Charlotte Hornets. Kind of like what Zach talked about with the Trailblazers. Like, I think Connor was a big reason why the Hornets made the list. Although I think Zach and I put them in there too, just a little bit lower than Connor. So for me with the Hornets, they got the number 10 spot and, made it to the play-in tournament. And of course they got ousted in the first game, but it could have been different, if Gordon Hayward had been healthy. And I know LaMelo Ball played, but he had, come off an injury. Like, he might not have been 100% going into that. So, I want to see what this Charlotte Hornets team can do, when everybody's healthy. Because, at one point, the Charlotte Hornets looked like they were locked into the playoffs. But of course, obviously, then Gordon Hayward got hurt and LaMelo Ball missed a bunch of games. And then, things kind of fell apart from there. But I want to see what this Hornets team does at full strength. I think they are capable. This team has played better than I expected. That's for sure. And LaMelo Ball is like, he looks like he's going to be a good core piece to this team. And that's something that makes the Charlotte Hornets interesting. Terry Rozier had a, career year last year. He had always just kind of been like, I guess you'd call him like a middle of the road type of player, like not bad, but not great, just kind of in the middle. But he did outstanding last year for them. And so I'm just really curious to see what the Hornets are going to do this year. They are definitely an interesting team for me. So with that being said, we will move on to team number 7, and that is going to be
the Miami Heat. Sorry for the delay. I was muted. I had myself muted and I said it and I was like, oh shit, I'm muted.
It had a nice little drum roll for that one.
I know, some drama. Okay, but yeah, staying, in the southeast here with the Miami Heat. I do think that this is going to be a really interesting team to watch, just because, again, like, I don't think they made a ton of moves really in the offseason. So what's going to happen? Like, is this going to be more like the, bubble playoffs type of Miami Heat, or the type of Heat that got swept by the Bucks? Really could go either way. Like, I know they brought in Kyle Lowry, and everyone's like, ooh, Kyle Lowry. You guys know how I feel about him, but still, it's a young team. Tyler Hero, you have, Duncan Robinson, guys who had a lot of expectations last year who didn't quite perform as well. And you still have like all-stars with Bam and Jimmy Butler. So this Heat team should be good. There's definitely expectations for them. And also, too, there's still always the possibility with, the Miami Heat, like, are they going to make a trade? Are they going to, trade for another superstar? Are they going to try and lure someone in? Like, the Heat still have that type of feel, in my opinion. They're a player away sort of type of team. And also, too, their player development system is one of the best in the league. So I guarantee you there's guys on their roster that you haven't heard of that aren't in the limelight that are going to end up being key contributors and really good players. So the Heat, I think, are going to be an exciting team to watch again this year. And things could really go either way. Things could go south. Things could go well for them. It's really going to be tough to tell with the Heat. And now let me introduce you to the Clutch Crew Sports number 6 most interesting team.
And that is going to be the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, with the stars that they have on this team, it would have been shocking if they didn't make the list. Obviously you got Steph Curry and, they've got Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green coming back. And obviously those guys aren't the biggest difference makers, but they contribute in their own ways. Just don't let Draymond Green shoot a 3-pointer, obviously. But I mean, but the biggest thing for me with the Warriors team, is Klay Thompson coming back. I mean, I'm not sure if he's supposed to be ready like when the season first starts. Have you heard anything about this, Zach?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. I'm not sure, but he's expected to come back eventually. I know that.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I know he's not missing like a whole nother
Yeah.
season. Like he's definitely coming back. So that's the most interesting thing about the Warriors team for me. With Klay Thompson, when he comes back, is he going to be, in his pre-injury form? Is he going to be able to get back to that, or is there going to be a significant, downgrade in his play? I'm really curious to see what he's going to do. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Klay Thompson. I like the way he plays the game. I respect his ability to be a good shooter, but also be a good defender at the same time. You got too many players nowadays that can score but can't play defense. Like I've always been a big defensive guy, so I really like guys like him. And this Warriors team is still a really good team. They've obviously been hampered by injuries over the last few years, but ever since KD got hurt in the finals and Klay got hurt in that finals against the Raptors, like ever since then it seems like the Warriors have been really cursed with injuries since then. But if they can get this squad that they have fully healthy, I mean, this is a team that could be dangerous in my opinion. So definitely intrigued with the Warriors, definitely curious what they're going to do. I don't really see how you could not have them in this list. So, but anyway, with that being said, we will move on to the number 5 most interesting team on our list, and that will be
the Phoenix Suns. So I didn't have myself muted there. Made sure to
good job
to turn that off. Yeah. So the Suns come in at number 5 on our list, and they would have, I think if we'd done a list last year, they would have been in this top 10 as well. They're still an interesting team, and it's for different reasons though. It's, they've made it to the finals now. They have to still go through the gauntlet of the Western Conference. Like there's, it's always a bloodbath in the West. I mean, you're playing, no matter who you're playing, anybody can beat you in the West, basically. So that they have that going against them. They have Chris Paul a year older. How is he going to play after getting that big contract extension? Like, there's still questions about the Suns. Like, we're not sure about if they're going to have a run to the finals again like they did last year, but that's their sort of expectations. So what's going to happen with them? Are they going to, like, they could potentially even miss the playoffs, for example. Like, that's not out of the question with how good the West is. So how are the Suns going to do? How is Chris Paul going to do a year older? You have obviously Ayton and Booker. Booker's one of those other, Booker's kind of like Dame. Like, he could just explode in a game for 60 points. Like, the Suns are going to be fun to watch, and they're going to be entertaining to see how they live up to the expectations from a season ago. And now, let me introduce you to the Clutch Crew Sports number 4 most interesting team.
And that will be the Atlanta Hawks. For me, with the Hawks were probably the biggest surprise team of the year last year. Like, even though the Suns were somewhat surprising, the Hawks were definitely the most surprising. And for me, I'm just really interested to see, are they going to be able to, replicate the same success that they had? I mean, they obviously they made that big coaching improvement last year, and that really made a difference for their team. You saw how much better the team played. And I think, when they played the Knicks in the first round last year, I think for a lot of people that was a toss-up on who was going to win that series. But, then when they went and played the 76ers, not very many people were giving them a chance to win that. Like, I think Connor's the only person I can think of besides Hawks fans that picked the Hawks to win that series, and they did. So this Hawks team is going to be really interesting. I mean, John Collins just got that, big contract extension, and this obviously they got Trae Young. They pretty much have all of the same pieces that they had. So this is a young, dynamic team, and just what makes them interesting is going to be, what are they going to do? Are they going to be able to find a way to take that next step and maybe get to the conference finals, or even somehow get to the finals? Are they going to, be a second round exit again, or are they going to be worse? I mean, well, no, not second round exit. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but yeah, are they going to, but are they going to be worse? Like kind of like what Zach talked about with the Suns. I mean, this is a team that, while they had great success last year, if it was a fluke, they could go backwards. So I'll be, really curious to see how their season goes. Good young core there. And with that being said, Zach is actually going to take the next two teams. So first at number 3 will be
the Chicago Bulls. So the Bulls come in at number 3. That, if you haven't really been keeping up with the NBA in a while, you might be like, really? Why are the Bulls number 3? Because they haven't been good for a while. And they're number 3 for, this is one that, once we get to the top 5, like all 3 of us are basically agreeing on these teams. Like we all have the Bulls highly ranked as being an entertaining team to watch, and it's really a combination of, or really I'll just say, like, they're out of their rebuild mode. So they've been in rebuilding mode for a couple years, and really after like the Jimmy Butler trade, they entered a rebuild. And last year they traded for Vucevic from the Magic. They added him, and then this year in free agency they went crazy spending money on players, and they added Lonzo Ball to be their point guard. So this team, that already had like Zach LaVine, an all-star type of player, they're going to be really interesting to watch, because they're one of these teams that I think a lot of people are going to be, predicting them to have like be one of the most improved teams from last year. So they missed out on the playoffs last year. They didn't even get a chance to play in the play-in games. But this year, I think people are going to have them in the playoffs, or I don't know if the NBA is doing the play-in games again, but at the very least, that I think there's a lot more expectations on the Bulls. Vooch will be there now for an off season, so he was a late addition to the team. That they were already, when they added him, they were facing an uphill climb to make the playoffs. But I really want to see how Vooch does on a good team like the Bulls, with other, I should say, good players around him. We still don't know if this will be a good team or not, but Lonzo Ball going to his third team now with the Bulls. I think while he was good with the Pelicans, he improved himself. I think a fresh start was needed from the Pelicans, and I think the Bulls are a good match for him. So lots of new additions to this team, and should be really fun to watch and really entertaining to see how their season goes. And now let me introduce you to the Clutch Crew Sports number 2 most interesting team, the Brooklyn Nets. So I've got the Nets here. The Nets were my pick to be the number 1 most interesting team. They were already interesting with, Kyrie, KD, and Harden. They're coming back. Blake Griffin's coming back. They have all these, major name star players, but they're all kind of weird, like they're a bunch of, like, KD, like he's always in the news, like he was in the news last year with stuff off the court. Harden at the start of the year, we had the fat Harden stuff, he's got injuries. Kyrie's injured a lot, the flat earth thing. KD was injured a lot. And then Steve Nash was the head coach. So it was like, wow, then look at the Nets, and they got upset in the playoffs by the Bucks last year. Came down in Game 7, the end of overtime, like Game 7, crazy ending to the Nets season. But what really adds another twist to the Nets to make it interesting this year is the fact that for their home games in their city, they're requiring, vaccines for the games. So with that being said, Kyrie is not vaccinated still. So because he's not vaccinated, he can't play at Nets home games, which, that's half their games right now he can't play in. And I think there's like some other cities like Golden State, the Knicks, like there's some other venues like Canada, where you have to be vaccinated to play in. So while it's not the majority of circumstances, it affects the Nets as a team. And it'd be one thing, if it was like the 10th man on the team wasn't vaccinated and couldn't play, like that would still be a story because he's missing half the games, but Kyrie's a all-star superstar player. So it's going to be interesting to see if eventually he does get vaccinated or if he doesn't. Like there's still the rules and the situations are, with COVID are always being changed and updated. So we really don't know what's going to happen. Like he just now is able to start practicing with the team because it's at a private facility. But it's just so weird to me that you're gonna have one of your best players can't play at the home games, but he can play on the road games. So are the Nets going to be better on the road because of having Kyrie? Like, and how is it going to work with the team if he's in and out of the lineup every other game? Like, if once we see this actually start to take place, it's going to be real interesting to see the home versus road type dynamic with the Nets because it's going to be like you're playing different teams. You're going to have different lineups and everything. And it's not because of a guy being injured, it's because of a guy being not vaccinated and that being the rule for where he plays at. So, I mean, for that reason, that puts the Nets over the top for me as the most entertaining and interesting team to watch. And I'll go ahead and let Eric introduce the number one most interesting team.
The Oklahoma City Thunder. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, Darius Baisley bulked up, so watch out, NBA. Watch out, the Thunder are coming. But yeah, no. For me, and I know Connor picked this as well. Our choice as the number one most interesting team is going to be the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, this seemed like an obvious choice for at least the top two, just because. I mean, obviously for starters, you've got LeBron going into his like 19th season or whatever, 20, whatever it is, like his millionth season. Is this going to be the year where he starts to decline, or is he going to still keep being able to put up the numbers that he puts up? I want to be curious to see about that. I'm sure he'll still get some triple doubles, but also, I mean, when you look at all of the moves that this team has made just in this last season alone, really even the last two seasons, like I've never, in either basketball or football, the two main sports that I've watched, like I've never seen a team that's a championship caliber team make so many roster changes. Like it's just like, Zach, have you ever seen this? Like,
No, I haven't.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and then not only that, like with everybody they brought in, I mean, this is a really old team. I mean, I think the average age on this team is like over 30. I mean, so that's going to be really interesting to watch too. But obviously, by far the most interesting thing about the Lakers is with the addition of Russell Westbrook. How are him and LeBron going to coexist together on the court? I mean, I've seen people on Twitter, like, of course, especially Lakers fans, are all excited about it. It's like LeBron James and Russell Westbrook have the most triple doubles combined and whatever, and they're on the same team. It's like, but the thing is, they're both not going to get triple doubles in a game at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, so somebody's going to have to share. Is it going to be like, well, they'll let Russ handle the workload one game and then LeBron the next, or you know, how's that going to work? I mean, that's just a really interesting dynamic. And you saw clashes in Houston when Russ and Harden were together because they both have a similar style. They both like the ball dominate. And there were some clashes at times. So I'm really curious how this is going to work out with the whole Russell Westbrook and LeBron James thing. I was not expecting that when they made that trade. I remember hearing initially that they were going after Buddy Hield. And while he's not as good of a player as Russ, I felt like that move would have made more sense because, one, they wouldn't have to give up as many assets to get him. And then, two, I felt like more importantly, he'd be a better fit next to LeBron as a good three-point shooter. Because I don't really know how I feel about the shooting on this team. And that's, if you're going to be on a team with LeBron, I mean, that's the main thing you need because, he's got that drive to the basket game. And when the bucket's not there in the paint, he likes to kick it out. And you need good three-point shooters that can hit those open threes. And I just don't know if the Lakers have that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works. I mean, you got the combination of the age, the older age being a factor. And then, there's a little bit of injury prone. Anthony Davis seems to get hurt a lot. And LeBron over these last couple, he's generally not been injury prone in his career, but over these last couple, last 2-3 seasons, he's started to accumulate injuries. And then last year, Russ sat in a lot of back-to-back games for load management. So it's just, what are the Lakers going to do? It's going to be really interesting. I mean, looking at the talent overall, they could very easily win the championship, and I think most people will predict that they will, or at least get to the finals. But at the same time, this is a team that, if they have injuries or setbacks or chemistry problems with Russ and LeBron, could be an early exit again. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to do. So that's going to round out our top 10 most interesting teams for the NBA season. Let us know in the comments below if you agree with our picks, if there's another team you think might have been more interesting that should have on the list, or just let us know your thoughts. And I guess that's actually going to also wrap up the episode as well. So Zach and Nate, this was fun. Zach, thank you for letting me host. I had fun taking over the reins this week. It was a good episode, I think. And but yeah, so let us know your thoughts on the episode in the comments below. Give us a subscribe if you're not already, and hit the bell for notifications. And you can follow us on Twitter at clutchcrewsports. And we will be back with another episode next week. I want to change my role here. So as always, guys, be clutch.
See ya.
And for Eric, peace.